Yo, what is going on? Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Michael, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how we helped our client do over $400,000 with one single live training. Now, this entire channel is dedicated to helping you if you're a coach, consultant, even an agency owner that's trying to run live digital events. That's like webinars, challenges, 3-day events, 5-day events, 2-day events, anything where you're pitching somebody live via digital, right? And so I'm not going to bullshit you every time that I make one of these videos where I tell you that I just made $400,000 with a client. I'm going to show you proof, right? Because there's too many wannabe gurus on the internet acting like they know something when they literally do not. They're regurgitating information. So I'm not going to be one of those guys. And I'm going to tell you straight up what we're able to do and how much money we made for our clients. So hopefully you can do the same thing. Now, I can't guarantee you'll get the same results, but I can guarantee I will give you the same information that we use with our clients, right? So let me just jump in real quick here. So first off and foremost, I'm going to show you the results that we did with one of our clients. So you can see this is in November. We did $1 million per month with this client for that month, and we did $424,000 for the live training, which is the event, right? So $424,000 with one webinar, right? Over $1 million for this month. Now, this client consistently typically does anywhere between about 800 to like 1.1 million, and a lot of times we do one big webinar. We don't do weekly webinars, so we got to knock it out of the park, right? So what we're going to be talking about today is the entire stack, like everything that we do step by step on how we actually build these webinars for our clients. So first off, the tech stack. Now, we don't have some crazy tech stack. We're not using like 1,000 different softwares, right? The tech stack that we use is number one, our automations, email, SMS. We use Go High Level. So if you ever heard of Go High Level, it's a great platform. It actually does almost everything in one. So if right now you're using Calendly and you're using like some random tech software, like you can just get Go High Level and you don't have to worry. Everything's built into one software and it works great, right? Like you can see we're doing $1 million a month with a client using this software, right? So SMS, email, calendars, it does landing pages, like everything. Let me just pop this in here, landing pages. So you know, like it does literally everything for us, right? Now, the second thing that we use is Webinar Jam. Webinar Jam is basically the software that hosts your webinar, right? So if you ever used Webinar Jam before, it basically gives you a lot of like back-end analytics. So like if you use Zoom or something, like Zoom is okay, but it's not built for like understanding the analytics and the data of a webinar so you can scale it. It doesn't drop offers and things like that. So we prefer to use Webinar Jam because that's a very clean software, very user-friendly, and you get a lot of analytics, right? That's my favorite part of this. So I'll show you here. This is the webinar that we did with this client that did over 400, 12,000 registrants, 5,000 live attendees. Just to be clear, I think we should have done probably more than 400,000 with that many live attendees, but it is what it is. But you can see basically like you get all of these analytics on the back end, right? So you can see like how many people started. This is a weird little dip. I think it was a little glitch that they had, but you can see like we pretty much held pretty steady through here. And so what you can see is when you get a big drop off, like right here, you want to ask yourself, hey, why did this happen? So in this instance, 55 seconds, we did the pitch. Now the pitch, you always have a big drop off. So if you ever ran a webinar and you see this crazy data, don't worry. It's totally normal for people to drop off after the pitch. They're like the freebie suckers, right? Like they're like, oh, I just want all the free information. I can't believe you would pitch me. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. It's free. Go away if you don't want it. And that's what all these people do, right? So you can see a little bit more free information here, or excuse me, data information here. We don't use a lot of like the monetization side of it and stuff like that, sales from the live room, because we send them to booked calls. So you're not going to see that kind of data here, but we use it mostly for just like this to try to get the data and the analytics of understanding like when people are showing up, when people aren't, and like when they're dropping off, right? Because like if you were to see a big drop off, like you didn't see this curve go up and you just saw like this curve come here and start dropping off at 20 minutes, you know that you got to change something at 20 minutes in order to keep people's attention, right? So that's why I love this software. It works great. Right, so the table of contents is basically what we're going to be talking about today. So each webinar consists of what I call the 3 Ps, right? And so the 3 Ps are pre-webinar, right? So what happens before the webinar, presentation, which is like during the webinar, right? And post-webinar, what happens after, right? All 3 of these are completely necessary and super important. There's really not like one of these that is more important than the other. If you can line all of these up with the right KPIs, you will have a badass webinar. But it also works in reverse. If you screw up every single step of this, you will make no money on your webinar. So that's one of the things that's a little sketchy sometimes with webinars is that you can literally like totally bomb a webinar because there's so many different pieces that have to align and go right. So this video will kind of give you every single step into this, right? And so your pre-webinar basically consists of your landing page, your pre-SMS and email, and your promotion, right? So the page that you build, how you actually get people to the webinar, right? So the SMS and the email, you want to make sure you're doing both. Do not only do email, make sure you have SMS too. And then of course, like promoting it. So whether you're promoting it organic, paid, whatever that may be, right? So first off, let's go into registration page. So your registration page is obviously where people go to sign up for the webinar itself. Now this is like right at the very forefront. The most important part of this is picking a good topic, right? Like there are so many times when people pick a stupid ass topic and it's like, dude, nobody wants to learn that, right? And so make sure you pick a topic that people actually care about. And so your headline basically on the page is pretty much your topic, right? So your top section is going to be your headline. So the headlines that I like to go with / topics I like to go with are typically like your expertise in an amount of days. So, hey, how you can buy 3 properties in the next 12 months, right? Like whatever your expertise is that you help them in the X amount of time. Now, the second one is personal story or achievement, right? Like this one right here is one of the easiest ones to just start off with. So if you are a coach or a consultant and you are teaching people how to do something, you clearly are teaching them because you got a result first. And if you don't have a good result, you probably shouldn't be a fucking coach. Okay. So the industry is terrible. There's a lot of people who they'll buy one rental property and suddenly they're like a coach, or they'll sell one product on Amazon and suddenly they're an Amazon seller, Amazon coach. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Go get really good at something and then teach people. Stop trying to be the guy that makes like 10 grand a month and then tries to make 100 grand a month being a coach. It's ass backwards, right? Anyway, the last one is achievement of a student or a client they can relate to. Similar to this video right here, I am telling you of a achievement that we got with one of our clients, right? That's a good topic for a webinar, right? If I were to host a webinar and I said, hey, this is how I got $400,000 on one webinar, I'm going to teach you how to do it step by step. You'd be like, all right, cool. That sounds like a good webinar to attend, right? And so here are 3 different ideas. And let me jump into pages so you can see what they actually look like, right? So the first one here is basically like my system to get X, right? So right here, we talked about either how you do your expertise in X amount of days, months, right? And so learn my $100 million blueprint to prepare yourself to buy 3 to 5 rentals in the next 12 months, right? This is a really good topic. Now, what is unique about this is that our client actually made over $100 million or owns $100 million worth of real estate. So it like aligns really well. Like, and this right here isn't actually like a real thing, obviously, right? Like we kind of like made up this like catchy name, $100 million blueprint to prepare yourself to buy 3 to 5 rentals in the next 12 months, right? And so that's a really good example of how you can like frame this type of messaging. The second one is your personal case study or your personal results. How I generated over 25 million in bookings from my virtual Airbnb business in just 5 years. Now, this guy doesn't have to think about anything. I just said, okay, cool. Tell me your results. What have you been able to do? He's like, well, I made over $25 million in Airbnb, right? Great. How long did it take? 5 years. Cool. How I generated over $25 million in bookings from my virtual Airbnb business in 5 years. And virtual is a good keyword here because this guy actually lives in Australia, but he has Airbnbs in the USA. He has them in UK, Dubai. He's got some in Australia now that he moved there. He's got them all over the place. So he literally runs a virtual Airbnb business. So these are 2 really good examples of what it looks like for like your personal case study and then using your expertise to give them some type of result. Now, what's really important about these is you have to be very specific. You don't want to say, learn my blueprint to buy rental properties this year. Like that is too broad. Like get really specific. Like you want to teach them how to buy 3 to 5 rental properties? Tell them. You want to teach them how to buy or how to list their first product on Amazon? Tell them, hey, the more specific you can get, the better your headline will be and the higher conversion you'll get, right? So once you do your registration page, then it comes down to your thank you page, right? And so your thank you page has a couple cool little tricks that you can add. Like most people will just add like a standard thank you page, right? There's a few things that you want to think about when you do a thank you page, right? Number one, how can I ask them to do something more, right? There's a lot of people when they opt into something, they essentially like forget that they opted in, right? Like they opt in they're just like opt-in whores. They just opt in for fucking everything. And so like you got to make sure they take maybe an extra step, right? You want to get at least 20 to 30% of those people to take a second step, right? To go do something so that they kind of solidify their spot. Like they say that they really want to be there. This will help your show rate, right? And so basically you can see right here what we do with this one is we actually ask them to DM us, right? And so if you have a really good Instagram and you've got setters or you're really on top of your DMs, this is an amazing strategy to open up more conversation before the webinar, right? And so think about it. If somebody just opts in for a webinar, you send them an email, whatever, like there's not much relationship building there, right? But if somebody opts in for a webinar, they go here, they DM you, you send them a freebie, they go through the freebie, and you start having a conversation with them, not trying to sell them or anything, just like, hey man, just curious, like why you downloaded this, like what did you learn from it, or blah, 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 blah. That is going to prompt somebody to show up to the webinar. Your show rates are going to skyrocket. Plus, when they're on the webinar, they're so much more likely to buy from you because you spent the time with this person. You had them take additional steps. Super important on the thank you page to try to get them to do another step, right? So you can see we asked them to DM us. Then you can see like this, read this. This is always super important. Like people don't always pay attention to this kind of stuff, but we always put it because some people will read it. And then you got like a couple little videos. So if they're here, like if you have really good YouTube videos, or your client has really good YouTube videos, or you have Instagram videos that have popped off, put these here, right? And so that they can see a little bit like getting to know you a little bit, and they can see like some of the results, right? You see this one has 52,000 likes. So like immediately there's some authority there, right? And if they go visit the page, they're like, okay, cool, this guy's legit, right? Now, and if they go DM you, not only do they get to have a conversation with you, but they know that you're not just some dude in a basement acting like he sells Airbnb, right? And at the bottom of our page, we always add like their socials just in case they want to go to them, right? So that's the top. That is the registration page, the thank you page, and then it comes down to like actually like setting up the entire webinar, right? So I'm not going to go through creating a webinar because like this is like a whole different video and it's like very like detailed, just creating it in Webinar Jam. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to kind of give you like an overview of how to actually set this thing up. Then your pre-webinar automations, right? So once somebody actually opts in for your webinar, like you have to have your automations dialed in, right? You've got to have an email that goes out immediately. You've got to have an SMS that goes out immediately. Then you have to have SMS and email all the way up until the event. Like, and if you don't, literally, there have been so many times when like something went wrong with our text system and like a text didn't go out. Like the last text at 10 minutes didn't go out, but all the other ones went out and our show rate dropped by like 10%. You know, normally it's, let's say at 30%, it dropped to like 20% because one little text at the very end. So make sure that you have all of these reminders. Like you have to slam these people or they're not showing up, dude. It sucks. It is what it is, but you have to be on top of it. And you have to add things like this. If you add stuff like this, you have people who are have a higher likelihood of showing up, right? And so pre-webinar automations, I'll jump into some automations here, but you've got your email automations, you've got your SMS automations. Now, when you're doing email and SMS, you can actually do them both inside of Go High Level. Now, if you're like this client right here, this is just like a pro tip. If you're a client that's doing 12,000 registrants, then you need to be using a different software for email, right? SMS is totally fine. Use a different software for email. In our case, we like to use ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is basically only built for email. So any software that's really only built for one thing is usually better than every other software. And email, with their deliverability and everything, you want to make sure you use a really good software. If you're probably surpassing, I'd say about 2,000 registrants, that's where you kind of want to use like a really good software. Before that, if you have less than 1,000 registrants, it really doesn't matter. You can use Go High Level and it'll work totally fine. But when you start sending mass volume, like 12,000 emails at a time, 2 or 3 times a day, go get a software that is built for just email, right? And so I'm not going to go into that one, but just, a pro tip just in case you need. And so I'll go into the automation here. So this is inside of Go High Level right here. So you can see this is our entire flow and our entire sequence to send them before the webinar, our pre-webinar, right? So when they come in, they opt in for the page, they end up coming into here. And so what we do is we have this event start time. Now this is super important. Like I'm not going to get through all the nitty gritty of how you actually set all of this up, but this right here will save your ass. There are so many times we've come in and somebody screwed this up and they were like, the team that we were working with were sending messages at the wrong times. And like, dude, if you send messages at the wrong time, the webinar can be done. Especially in our case, we spend $70,000 or $80,000 on one webinar. If we start sending stuff at the wrong time, dude, you have just lost 80 grand, right? Probably more because you'll make 400, right? And so, what you want to do here, the very first message that you send needs to just basically give you like a quick little overview of what they're going to learn. And then you also want to send them the date and you also want to send them the link. Every single message you need to have the date and the link, right? Date and link, date and link. Do not forget those things because people forget, people get confused. Most people don't realize what they're, like I said, they don't realize what they're doing. They literally will opt in for stuff. And so you want to stay on top of them and give them the date because people are stupid and give them the link all the time because they will be looking for the link, right? And so we drop those both in each one. And if you're doing this strategy right here where you're actually asking them to DM you, you can add a little 30-second delay and then say, hey, by the way, go DM us for X, Y, and Z, whatever you decide to do, right? So you can see we do 7 days before, 4 days before, 3 days before, 2 days before, 24 hours before, 8 hours before, and then we've got, in this case, we actually dropped a voicemail, which didn't work great, to be honest. I don't think it improved anything, but we did try it on this client, and I didn't see much improvement, and it cost us more money. But you can drop voicemails and stuff. That's the cool thing about this. They literally have everything. So let me just open this up so you can kind of see. You can send SMS, send email, you can call, drop the voicemail, you can do Messenger. I don't use these too much because we use ManyChat and stuff like that, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do inside of here if you've never used it. And then you can see 8 hours before, 2 hours before, 10 minutes before. Excuse me. So you can literally, like, we literally will send messages all the way up to it. And the last day, what's important is the very last day, you send one in the morning, you send one 2 hours, you send one 10 minutes before. All three in one day. Do not mess that up. The last day is arguably the most important day to send these people reminders, right? We also do it via email. 8 hours before, 2 hours before, and 10 minutes before, right? So make sure that you send those the last day. Now, depending on how far you're actually advertising or promoting this out, you can do 7-day reminder, you can do 5-day reminder, whatever it is. The early reminders don't really matter as much. You just need to remind them, right? They're just basically reminders. The ones that get closer to the event is where you're like, send them YouTube videos, send them more freebies, send them testimonials, like send them things where they're going to, they're going to be excited to like show up, right? You have to almost like resell them on wanting to show up to the webinar, right? But early on, they're going to be too far out to even be resold, right? So make sure that you at least send some reminders far out. When you get towards that 3 days and closer, start sending things that are going to tease them. Send them a teaser of you, you taking a picture in front of your presentation, or a screenshot of the presentation, or anything that can really get them to be like, ooh, man, I want to show up, right? Very important when you're doing the pre. Now, after you set up your pre, you're going into your presentation. Now, presentation is obviously very important because this can literally make or break the amount of money that you make, right? And so you can have an amazing presentation and then you screw up the pitch, right? So there are different pieces to a presentation. And so we have this presentation template that I'll open up real quick right here so you can walk through it. All right, so this is the template that we typically give all of our clients, right? And what we actually do is we have them fill all of this out first, and then we come in and we like clean it up, right? And so if you are the personal brand or you're the person doing the webinar, then you can take this actual template. Like what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually put this below. I'll put this entire SOP. It's probably going to look a lot prettier when you guys start downloading it, right? But I'll have all of this information in there. Go click below. It's completely free. You can download it. There's other videos on here, and this presentation is actually in here as well, right? And so this presentation, what you want to do is just fill it all out, and then you really don't have to make it very pretty. That's the one thing that you need to understand is like you don't have to make this super, super pretty. Like sometimes the ugliest stuff works the best because it's the easiest just to read. You just having a white screen with black text is great. Like don't put a ton of colors and all this crazy shit on here. Like it's easier when like they can just read it. What the goal is here is to give them as much information as possible to prove that you know what you're talking about, and then they want to take that next step. Like you don't have to make it super pretty, right? Like how many times have you seen somebody dressed up in a suit next to the dude that's wearing sweatpants, and the sweatpants guy is way smarter, makes a lot more money, right? It's kind of like that. And so give them everything. And like Alex Hormozi says, he says, give away the secrets and sell the implementation. Like, dude, don't be afraid to put everything into this thing, right? So I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can here. So I'm not going to spend too much crazy time. Again, if you want to download, there's a longer video in here. But basically, you start here, you put your headline, the one that you already had on your page, right? Then you gauge the room, you kind of ask a question, try to figure out who's in this room, right? Like you want to know by talking to beginners, intermediate, experts. So you can spend a certain amount of time throughout your presentation on majority of the people that are in here. Like if you made a presentation talking about, let's say the Airbnb example, like buying Airbnbs, then like gauge the room, say how many Airbnbs do you own, right? If everybody owns an Airbnb, like maybe you don't want to talk about beginner shit, right? Then you go table of contents. What's in the table of contents? Your backstory. Now your backstory, be careful with this. This is the number one thing I see people mess up the most. It's because they spend like 20 minutes talking about their story. Dude, no one gives a shit about you or your story, right? The truth is, Everybody is selfish. They're coming here for you to teach them so they can take the education and go somewhere and make more money with it. So do not spend a lot of time. The thing that you need to do on here is you just need to prove to them why they're here and listening to you specifically. You have to show authority right here, right? So you want to make sure that they understand through your story what you're capable of doing and what you're capable of teaching them, right? So do not spend more than 5 minutes on this. I see people spend literally 20, sometimes 30 minutes on their story. Dude, no one cares. What you're going to see is there's in the chat box, you're going to see people pissed off saying, dude, hurry up, get on with it. People are going to start dropping off. They're going to start leaving. Make sure this is short, right? And so your structure your story like an epiphany bridge. Like, hey, I was here just like you. Here are my internal struggles. Like, how did I feel about myself? Here are my external struggles. My wife, family resented me. I wasn't making money. I couldn't pay for daycare, shit like that, right? Then you have a moment of clarity. You have what you did to change. Then you have accomplishments now. This is where like people understand why they're listening to you. Then you have your internal and external changes after, right? So now my wife absolutely loves me. Our marriage is great. We travel the world 7 times a year. Like those are the things that I was here, now I am here, and this is how I got here, right? Now, step 1 of your training, you want to make sure that we typically do 3 steps. You can add 4, it's not that big a deal, but each step needs to have a problem, solution, then it has to create another problem, right? So step 1 of your training, problem, solution, then it creates another problem. What's the next problem after step 1? Step 2. This is how you solve the problem that we created in step 1. What's the problem after step 2? Step 3 is how you solve the problem in step 2. So I'll give you an example, like the Airbnb example. Would it be like the first step is finding your property. So once you find your properties, what's the next problem that occurs? Okay, how do you negotiate with landlords? How do you actually get these properties? If you're not going to buy them, you want to sublease them. I don't know if you know what that means, but if you want to sublease them, whatever, right? And so each step is a problem, solves the problem, creates a new problem, right? And then one of the cool things that we do is we do a free gift slide. So very similar to this freebie, right here that we had. You're going to do kind of the same thing. You're going to tell people to go DM you for whatever freebie you want to give them. Now, the best way that this works is if you have a freebie here, right? So if you have the freebie here and you're showing how you use the freebie and how it helps you do step 2, you say, by the way, do you want this freebie, right? Go ahead and send me a DM blank, right? With the word blank. And the real goal of this is like to send them to your DMs. You have another place to sell them. So let's say, for example, you do this webinar and nobody buys it, but you got 200 people in your DM. Great. Go ham. Go figure out how to get them to buy from you, right? So it's just another avenue to try to get them to sell just in case it doesn't work right here, right? Now, step 3 of your training, last step, then you go into transition to close, right? This is an important slide because you don't want to make sure you don't go from step 3 to just like, hey, buy my shit, right? And then I do a money math slide, which is basically like, how can you easily show how it can make them more money? Or how can you easily show, let's say, for example, that whatever the end goal is, and maybe it's not, maybe you don't do money offers, right? We do mostly money offers, but maybe the end goal is this. Show them easily, like let's say it's health, like, day 7, you've already done this, and this is how much health you could be. Day 14, whatever. Like money math is like, hey, month 1, you buy 1 property. Month 3, you buy a second property. Month 6, you buy a third property, right? This is the value of all those properties, how much cash flow you'd be creating, right? Make it to where it's like easy to attain, right? Where it's like, man, you can even do like 1 property a year that you buy, but after 5 years, you have $7 million worth of equity, or excuse me, $7 million worth of value, or $4 million worth of value. Now it's like, oh shit, that was easy. I only had to buy 1 every single year, but there's actual math there. And you can even use your own math, right? How you did it. Key takeaway number 1, what was the recap? Key takeaway. Key takeaway number 2, key takeaway number 3. Tip of the iceberg slide, basically, hey, this is only 5% of what I can show you. 95% I was not able to because we'd be here for too long. Now, ask them permission. Is it okay if I share the program with you to help you with the other 95%, right? This allows people to like not feel super people are like really shitty when you pitch sometimes. They're like, oh, I knew it. Yeah, of course you knew it, dude. What do you think you're doing here? So this makes like okay to like pitch them, right? And then you hit them with your offer. Now in your offer slide, one of the things you want to make sure you do depending on your offer is if you offer something that's high ticket, that's let's say $2,000 and above, if you're going to offer a discount, you want to make sure that you don't use percentages and you use actual numbers, right? And so, for example, if you're selling like a $50 product, saying 50% off is fine, right? Because $25 doesn't sound that cool. 50% off sounds bigger, or 70% off sounds bigger. But if you're selling something that's like $5,000 and you're going to say 50% off, well, it doesn't do it justice because it's actually $2,500 off. Like that's a lot. You can put both, right? You can put $2,500 off. That's 50%. But do not only put 50%. That sucks. Like that doesn't sound good compared to 2,500. So use actual dollar figures, right? Then you go, what's inside? What's inside? Testimonial number one. Start showing some testimonials. And a quick note, I see this all the time. Make sure it's big enough for people to read, right? And you can't put videos into your slides. Just put easy to read testimonials, right? Something where somebody can actually read it. Don't put little tiny testimonials or testimonials with like 2 paragraphs worth. People can't read that, right? Make it short, sweet, circle exactly what you want them to read, right? Testimonial 2, testimonial 3, then you go into a bonus slide. A bonus slide is essentially like, hey, not only am I giving you all of that and this discount, I'm also going to give you this, right? And you don't even need to give them a bonus. It can already be like part of it, but frame it as a bonus, right? Is there cool course that you give them, an extra course, or there's a cool, like you get an onboarding call, I get a free onboarding call, whatever it is. Maybe that's already part of your program, but put it in a bonus slide. They don't know it's already part of the program. It makes it look like it's even better, right? FAQ slide, right? This is a cool way of you handling objections. So you know the biggest objections probably for your audience. So you're like, hey man, our audience is busy people that have jobs and they don't know if they can, buy Airbnbs, right? So right here, it's like, can I do this with a full-time job, right? Yes, you can. And then you show a testimonial to prove that the FAQ is correct, right? So not only are you saying, yeah, you could do this with a job, people are like, all right, cool, I don't really care what you say. But then you're like, well, guess what? Tom has a full-time job. He works 40 hours a week, and he was able to buy 3 Airbnbs in the first 6 months of our program using X, Y, and Z, right? And so not only do you tell them yes, and you know the biggest objection, so you put this in here, right? So you're basically like selling them before they're even giving you the objection. Then you give a proof to show that that somebody has already done it, right? So it's not just like foo-foo bullshit that you're saying that, yeah, they can do it. Now, look, Tom did it, right? Next thing, FAQ slide number 2, same thing. Your second biggest objection, testimonial slide, right? FAQ slide 3, your third biggest objection. So this is like a great way of handling objections before you even get to like the sale, right? So let's say you're doing sales calls, or especially if you're selling on the webinar, these are so necessary to have because people have these objections. And if you're not on a sales call, they can't tell you the objection. You can't handle it, right? Like you have to handle it here live, right? So last one, testimonial FAQ slide 3, and then testimonial wall. Have a wall full of like, if you have this, right, of like hundreds of testimonials, like everywhere, bro, like just so many that they're like, oh my God, this guy is for sure going to be able to help me, If you don't have testimonial wall, don't put a wall. Don't put like 4 here. That's not going to help you. Just X this one out. Then offer slide again, and then you're just going to put Q&A. And then during the entire Q&A, leave this slide up. Do not move this slide. So the whole Q&A, you're answering their questions, you're soft, like you're soft pitching them the entire time, and the whole time they see this fat coupon, this fat discount, the website, like everything just stays here. Don't go to like a Q&A slide because that serves you zero purpose. No one cares that it says Q&A on the screen. But if it has your offer, it actually serves you to help you get more sales, right? And so that is our structure. Again, if you want this document, we do have it in the free SOP. There will be a link below. You can go ahead and do that. Now, after the presentation, right, the last step here is your post-webinar. So after you present, the next thing that has to happen is your post-webinar, your post-email and SMS, and then like your offer structure, right? So your post-email and SMS, similar to your pre, right here, basically, you can see people come in. One of the cool things that we do is we put them into this post-webinar sequence, right? When they go into the sequence, we actually send them a message 15 minutes into the presentation. This is such a hack to help people, like literally you'll boost your show rates from like 20% to like 30%, literally with doing this, because what you do is you actually take a screenshot of the presentation. So have somebody do this on your team. Take a screenshot of you presenting live, then you upload it in here, and then let the automation send it out, right? And so it'll send it out with a screenshot to the people who are not attending, and they're going to be like, oh shit, I got to jump on, right? Put it on some really cool slide that has some cool testimonial or some cool kind of phrase. Like that's like, and we're about to start showing you the steps to making $25 million in bookings or whatever, right? And then they're like, oh my God, like I got to show up to this thing. Like they're getting into the meat and potatoes here, right? That's really cool. That's great. And then what will happen here is you just send all of these for the next couple days, right? Now, emails, we actually send a little bit more emails again, since we're using a different software because this is a bigger webinar. I'm not going to be able to show you all of the emails, but we send pretty much 2 emails a day, right? So we'll send 2 emails a day. for the first 3 days, and then 1 email a day for the next 2 or 3 days, right? Depending on your audience, you can add more if you want to. I find that doing 2 a day is pretty good for email, and then 1 a day for SMS. Do not bombard people with SMS because they will start opting out, and it gets really annoying. SMS is super annoying. And after if they, let's say they didn't go to the webinar, like they're going to be pissed, right? Or they went to the webinar and was like, dude, screw this guy. I got pitched and that was a terrible webinar. They're going to be pissed and they're going to opt out, right? So try to be kind with the SMS. Don't go too hard, but emails where you can kind of like hammer them a little bit harder, right? And so after you set that up, there's just one more thing here. Pro tip is the 15-minute message I mentioned there, and different options after your webinar is over, right? So depending on the type of webinar that you do or the frequency of your webinar, you can either sell everybody who attends. So in our case, with this specific client, we sell everybody who attends because they only do it once a month, right? So that means that if you signed up for the webinar, whether you showed up or didn't show up, we're selling you, right? That is proven for us to get more booked calls, right? Now, it doesn't help if you're selling on the webinar because they really do need to be on the webinar to drop like $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000. But if you're selling booked calls at the end, like, hey, book a call to find out more and get X amount off, then you want to just like make sure you sell everybody if you don't do a lot of webinars. The other option is you only sell people who showed up. So usually if you're doing weekly webinars, then like you don't need to hammer every single person who showed up with like the offer, or who didn't show up, every person in general who showed up or didn't show up with the offer, because you're doing the webinar next week, bro. What you're going to do is only sell those who showed up, and then we recommend this again for weeklies, and then you invite them to the people who didn't show up, you invite them to the following week webinar. And so what we do is we put them in a sequence where it's replay. Hey, here's the replay, watch the replay, watch the replay. If they don't watch the replay, then they get dropped into like, hey, by the way, looks like you weren't able to make it or watch the replay. Guess what? It's happening next week as well, right? You send them the link to go register. So the goal is you got all these people. If they didn't show up and you do webinars weekly, the best chance of selling people is them showing up to a webinar, right? So let's re-invite them to the next webinar and see if we can get them to show up and get sold on the next one. And then honestly, some people just stay in this little bit of a cycle, right? But it's all good because if you build it and it's set up automatically, you don't have to worry about anything, right? And then the last thing is once they go through the sale, right? So let's say they go through all of these emails, all of these right here, all these SMS, they go to the very end, you can drop them into a sequence where you actually sell like a low ticket product or group, right? So one of our clients we work with, at the very end, he's like, hey, by the way, it doesn't look like you wanted to buy this. Maybe you're not ready or maybe it was too much. We've got this $40 a month group. Come on and join this group. And just a way to try to squeeze every bit you can out of all of these leads, right? There's a lot of people who maybe went to the webinar but didn't have the money, didn't want to pay, but they're down to join a $40 group. But you also don't want to mention the group too early, or these people are probably going to buy the group and not your high ticket product or whatever product you want them to buy, right? So this is the entire sequence. The video kind of ran a little bit long, but I hope you got as much information as possible. I would love to hear down below if you guys have any specific questions on any piece of this, because I'm happy to make specific videos that are a little more detailed, a little more in-depth on each of these pieces, or anything that you guys have any clarifying questions on. So if you got a lot of value out of this, go ahead, take this, use it, let me know if it works, and if you liked what you saw, please comment, like, subscribe. This is the very first video that we've done on this channel, and I will continue to do as much as I can to help you make more money. All right? I will see you guys soon. Peace out.